Jared McClain is a staff attorney with New Civil Liberties Alliance. Hey, I don't want to throw a grenade here, but based on some of the things I've looked at what you guys do, is this kind of the replacement for the old guard, the ACLU?
It's funny you mentioned, because I feel in a lot of ways that it is, because we really do try to, whenever we see the government, no matter who's in charge at NCLA, we want to stop them if they're violating people's civil liberties, regardless of politics, we don't really take policy stances, but if the government's exceeding its authority, we try to step in and put them back in line.
You know, now there's this case in Maryland, and I'm sure there are others, but this guy's suing because the CARES Act was supposed to help small business. And any small business, we did the same thing. You go through this application, and I'm going, ooh, I'm glad that's not me. Ooh, I'm glad I didn't do that. You know?
Yeah.
And so you have all these conditions. And, you know, this is in an environment where aren't we supposed to be giving people second chances? But apparently in this, if you own a small business and you have a record, no. Right?
Right. Yeah. Our client, Mr. Wilks, he owns a convenience store called Carmen's Corner Store, tiny little convenience store in Hagerstown, Maryland. And he refers to it as a do not pass go question. When you look at the application, there's only 8 questions, and 2 of them pertain to criminal history. And it says, if you answer yes, you are ineligible for this loan. The problem is that when Congress passed the CARES Act, they told SBA there are 2 criteria to get one of these loans. You have to have been in business before February 15th, so people can't try to just create a business to get a free loan. And you have to have employees on the payroll. He meets both those criteria, and there was no room for SBA to create a list of people that they didn't think were worthy of the loans.
You know, that's typical, right? Because this is where Congress has really dropped the ball, and this is my one of my pet peeves. The Supreme Court is punting on things that are obviously its responsibility, disputes between states. The executive branch is, always exceeding its authority no matter who's president. And Congress has abdicated its responsibility for making laws to agencies to kind of make their own, right?
Right. And I think that the congressional and the judicial abdications go hand in hand, because there's so many people in Congress. There's like a collective action problem trying to get them all to act. And because in this case, Congress, there's been over 100 Congress people now have sent 4 different letters to the SBA saying we didn't tell you were allowed to do this. You're not supposed to do this, and SBA just goes ahead and does it anyway. So unless the court will step in and fulfill its constitutional duty, nobody's going to keep the executive branch in check.
So this is one of those, I mean, we're talking the executive branch as a whole. I mean, I'm guessing even the president could say, stop doing that, and the agency could just thumb its nose or find some way to ignore it, right? Right.
We have other suits that address that exact problem, where the people in charge of the executive agencies aren't really actually answerable to the president and do what they want anyway. So we have suits to try to bring that back into line too. But you're absolutely right that there's so many agencies and there's so many people making decisions that the president, while he's nominally in charge, isn't controlling the day-to-day operations of the Small Business Administration.
Which is why we sent the bull to the China shop. That's always my impression. I want him breaking as many things as possible. People raise their eyebrows when I say that, but that's what we sent him for. All right, so how is this guy hanging in? I mean, obviously he's got some allies who have said, "Hey, we'll back you up here." And you guys, I guess, how do you guys, are you guys doing this? Is this a pro bono thing for you guys?
Yeah, this is pro bono. NCLA, we do, it's all pro bono litigation. We're a nonprofit, and we actually found him. He's a very impressive guy. As a lawyer, you don't always get to pick your clients, which is one thing we're kind of lucky about at NCLA. We get to be a little more selective, but he advocates for himself. He's in touch with his congressman. He's in touch with his senator. He's in touch with his state senator. There's all sorts of articles in the paper about him since he got in jail, like how good Carmen's Corner Store is, how they're giving out free meals, how good they are for the community. And he just, I think he realizes that if he doesn't advocate for himself, that nobody else is going to do it for him. And we were able to get in touch with him and file this lawsuit. And he's like, I would love to get this money, but I also just want to correct things for other people in small businesses who are in these positions. And that's what we're trying to do.
I want to get, it goes beyond Carmen's Corner Store, obviously, if other members of Congress are having a problem with this as well. Jared, can you hang on? I want to kind of dig a little deeper here, because this is part of a bigger problem. And again, it points out where these agencies, whichever they are, run amok. And apparently Congress can't reel them in either. More with Jared McClain, who is Jared McClain. I should do that better. Staff attorney with the New Civil Liberties Alliance, coming up. Jared McClain is a staff attorney at the New Civil Liberties Alliance. And look, I don't want to, neither one of us, I think, want to totally crap all over the SBA. I think what the Treasury Secretary did, what the administration tried to do, what was executed, I think shocked a lot of people that they could roll it out as quickly as they did. I mean, it was nearly doing the impossible, and government's too bulky to be able to even pull it off, and they pulled it off. It just, there were a lot of things they got to fix with it, right?
Yeah, and that's one thing I thought about. In one way, you want to sympathize with Secretary Mnuchin and the administrator of the SBA, because they did have a difficult task to get this off the ground very quickly. But the problem is this complication they created for themselves. Congress tried to make it even simpler, and they added all this red tape and all these hoops to jump through that weren't part of the law. And now they're facing lawsuits all over the country for different types. They excluded lobbyists. They excluded faith-based organizations, and then they had to pull that back. And if they would have just put together the simple program that Congress enacted, then I think this would have went a lot more smoothly.
You know, and look, you and I both know that there are people who took this money that were not entitled to it. They committed fraud. We know that happens somewhere, right? There, in all this effort to stop there from being fraud, they penalize people who really legitimately needed the money. And I guess in anything that happens, you know, certain people fall through the cracks because it just didn't work out. But, you know, we got common sense has got to come into play here somewhere, right?
Right. And if you look what they did last Friday at close of business, they announced another change to the rule. It's the fourth time they've changed it, and said, okay, if the crime that you've committed was embezzlement or fraud or lying on a loan application or something, we're still going to exclude you for the 5-year look-back period. But for everyone else, we're still going to exclude you anyway if you've committed a crime within the last year, or if you're on probation, or if you're under indictment. And that's another problem, because some of these people, they're under indictment for misdemeanors, like they got a felony, or they got a traffic ticket, or they got a DUI, and the court's closed because of COVID, so they never even got to have their day in court, and now their business can't pay their employees because they're under indictment and excluded by SBA's arbitrary rules.
Good Lord. Well, and here's the other problem. We have an agency that's very large. And again, I will always say it. Government, by its own definition, is somewhat inefficient, sometimes very inefficient. They may not even be able to find the person who to undo this, or can the secretary, or is this as simple as the secretary or the administrator saying, "Hey, let's quit," because they have been making it up as they go along, and that's part of the problem, right?
Yeah, right. That's absolutely right. And they could change it. They changed it again as recently as this past Friday. This particular question about criminal history, the original application said 7 years, then they changed it to 5 years. Then Secretary Mnuchin testified before Congress and said, okay, we'll change it to 3 years. And then 2 days later, they changed it to 1 year. So they know how to change it if they want to. They've just been rejecting the calls from Congress to remove the question entirely, because they want to keep their control.
So this has been really apparently this goes beyond Carmen's Corner store, right? Because if Congress is getting involved, this apparently has been happening to a lot of people. How many? Do we have an idea how many people got excluded?
We don't, and that's part of the problem. I know there's been a separate problem of the statistics that the SBA has been keeping on applications, but beyond the statistics they're even keeping or not keeping, the issue is the question says you are ineligible if you check yes for this box. So when Mr. Wilks walks into his bank looks at the form and says you checked yes. You're not eligible for this. And so when Mr. Wilks walks out of his bank, his bank's not going to put that into a system. And Mr. Wilks is one of the few people who actually walked into his bank with a form that said he was ineligible. Most people see that question and don't bother.
Yeah, he was truthful.
The statistics. Right. The statistics would never capture the people who know that they are ineligible and don't bother to go through the steps anyway.
You know that's the scary thing here, right? We have some people who will. I like a lot of people, and you probably have talked with a number of small business people as well. I didn't want the federal government giving me money. But when the government says you have to stop and your business stops and all your clients stop doing business, you're kind of left with no choice. And, that's the problem. It gives a lot of people the heebie-jeebies doing this in the first place. And then you have all these things that you read this note and you're going, well, good Lord, if I misuse this money, I could go to jail. Yeah. And the rules are changing constantly. It makes people nervous. And this is the people who want to do the right thing. And apparently this guy was truthful on his application. He didn't lie, right?
Right. And then after they denied him, he reached out to his congressman and got a letter from his congressman saying that he's supposed to be eligible and gave it to his bank. And they said, thank you. There's nothing we can do.
Yeah. Well, look, the banks were kind of trying to figure this out, too. And part of it was the speed. The rules were changing so fast and furious. And even the forgiveness on the PPP, there's still confusion. I think in many cases, except for this poor guy, and I'm guessing hundreds of other people, maybe thousands, who aren't eligible.
Sure.
A lot of people were helped by it, but we created a mess for ourselves in doing this. Yeah. And we saved some businesses. Yeah. But
some of the statistics say that 1 in 3 adults have a criminal record. So
wow,
there's probably more than a few hundred that were excluded by this.
How many people? Who's the guy that wrote the book about we're all felons? We've all committed something.
There's millions of laws out there now.
Unknowingly. But I know in our industry, and I'm not gonna I'm a little guy and I'm not gonna make trouble, but I know for a fact that when I'm honest with my federal agency that regulates the one of many who regulate me, it takes me longer to get results. And I know very well guys down the street have lied through their teeth. And not only them, the majority of them lie to this federal agency, and everything just goes swimmingly for them. And unfortunately, a lot of these agencies are underfunded, and the enforcement isn't there. And unless they just happen to catch them, you can lie away. That's one of the other problems.
Yes, it's troubling. Yeah, and the other thing is when the agency does act poorly, we run into the case. We have a case in New Jersey right now, completely unrelated to this, but where they stopped. They told landlords that they have to allow their tenants to use their security deposits toward their rent, and there's nothing the landlords can do about it. And we've had landlords reach out to us and say, we're scared to sue the governor. Like people don't want to step up and be the person to bring a lawsuit against the government because the government is a big and scary thing.
Well, and you're also dealing with, it's funny, you can sue. In some ways, it's easier to sue the federal government than it is a state government because they have sovereign immunity, right? The federal government does too, but it's easier to crack that one, right?
Yeah, each state is different, and there's all sorts of nuances and problems involved there. But you're right that it can be.
All right, we're gonna pray for this guy, and hey, at least he's got a lot of friends, and you guys too. Hey, Jared, where do people find out more about the new Civil Liberties Alliance?
Our website, you can find us online. Our website is nclalegal.org.
All right. Hey, we appreciate it. Keep up the good fight, my friend.
Yeah, thanks so much.
This guy sounds like a good guy, you know? All right. Hey, appreciate it, Jared.
Yeah, talk to you.